Chapter 32. Judy in Memphis. On the plane, Judy Hunnsicker read her briefing on the Memphis attack. Judy used to get motion sick when she flew, but she learned to control her symptoms with the unlikely combination of raw ginger, ginger ale, and pretzels. She crunched on the Hormuth extra salty thin sticks as she studied her dossier. Facts and informed conjecture. 1. A chemical attack on the federal court, United States District Court, Western District of Tennessee, and or the Memphis Federal Building, Clifford Davis Federal Building, 167 North Main Street, Memphis, Tennessee, took place Wednesday afternoon at 1:37 p.m. 2. Two stolen trucks were abandoned on the street at either end of the structure. 3. Each truck was equipped with commercial mosquito foggers as well as plastic buckets that recently contained retail-grade bleach as well as plastic buckets that recently contained retail-grade ammonia. 4. A person at least 6'6" in height and wearing a diving suit was seen fleeing the stolen Toyota truck. 5. A second person of average height was seen fleeing the area where the stolen GMC was abandoned using a non-motorized scooter. The second suspect also wore a diving suit as well as a diving mask. 6. Both suspects fled into a deliberately set smoke screen on Poplar Street. The smoke screen was successful in generating smoke. This might be the only successful aspect of the attack. Methodology of smokescreen is still being investigated. 7. The suspects are believed to have fled Mississippi in a white Chevrolet panel van. See photo number 46. A Chevrolet panel van of unknown ownership was abandoned and discovered in Jackson, Mississippi. There were hundreds of these items, and some of them looked interesting. Speculative methodology of smokescreen production, the effort to cover up DNA by spraying pork and beef blood inside the cabs of the stolen trucks, the proposition that these terrorists bore no relation to the Waller County terrorist. The Waller County terrorists used concentrated ammonia and concentrated bleach, while the Memphis terrorists used retail products. Fascinating stuff. But Judy Hunnsicker could not lose her focus. She had to concentrate on the matters pertinent to her task. It was her duty to locate video that tagged the white Chevy panel van on its trek from Memphis to Jackson. The UV team had come a long way since the Waller County attacks. They had almost completed a nationwide security cam database that was not yet in place for the prior investigation. For the routes between Memphis and Jackson, it was believed to be 90% accurate. No more cold calls or dead-end leads. Civilian personnel were calling the proprietors in advance of agents' arrivals. It would be as simple as a mail run. Pick up packages, bring them to headquarters. If all went well, Judy Hunnsicker would be back in Utah in a week. And Judy Hunnsicker reflected briefly on her own career. A senior agent, Paul DaCosta, had stated recently that most of the U.S. would be Glasgow 8 in another decade. Wall-to-wall video from the mountains to the prairies. Judy was investing her time in skills that would soon be obsolete, not unlike her Uncle Steve, who had been a high-paid typewriter engineer some years ago and found himself unemployed in middle age. She made a mental note to ask Bob Henderson for career advice. The transport plane landed on an out-of-the-way strip at Memphis International Airport. There, the passengers were routed to a nearby hangar where they boarded a nondescript tour bus. The tour bus hauled them to their destination at the Tennessee National Guard Army, just minutes away. At the entrance of the Army, the party's travel plans hit a snag. Agent in charge, Marvin Horton, started cursing in a loud tone. His grumbling was echoed by the other 16 members of the team. But the complaining would not help their situation. The Tennessee National Guard, in conjunction with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, had recently formed their own biochemical response and investigation teams. They informed the wayward travelers that they would not be welcome on base. 2 Shelby County Sheriff Patrol cars showed up quickly and politely offered to escort the tour bus from the area. The civilian bus driver sided with the locals. Despite the onboard instructions to park the bus until the matter was resolved, the driver accepted a blue light escort to a vacant lot about a mile down the road. There, he let it idle with a warning from a throaty deputy to stay away from the armory. Meanwhile, Agent in Charge Horton called the Memphis office, the Utah office, Washington, and Quantico. He made other calls as well and yelled at people on the other end so as to not look as if he was waiting for a response from his superiors. 18 minutes after the bus started its idle, Agent in Charge Horton received a call from the east. An Arkansas National Guard Armory in nearby West Memphis would now be their command center. Groans and grumbles were replaced with chuckles and expressions of respect for the proactive efforts of TBI and the Tennessee National Guard, and the 20-minute junket into Arkansas went smoothly, and the bus was soon parked outside the entrance of the armory. Unfortunately for the travelers, access was once more denied. The occupants of the armory were polite but firm. The U.S. Marshals had recently established their own biochemical investigation unit, and this was their maiden voyage. Judy had read an in-house report on the changing face of the U.S. Marshal Service. They, too, were looking to be more proactive. Their new director had lofty ambitions of expanding the size and scope and status of the trash collectors and babysitters. Bioterrorism provided the agency an opportunity to jump a couple of notches in the law enforcement pecking order, and they were not about to let a good crisis go to waste. Agent in Charge Horton roared and cursed into his cell phone. At this time, he raised his voice to his superiors and reminded them that an American city had been the target of a recent chemical attack, and now how the FBI, the lead federal agency since its inception, was being outflanked by upstarts. The marshals, meanwhile, offered sandwiches and chips and drinks, but no one dared accept the gifts. The wait was longer than the previous one, and the driver, a corpulent, balding white man, yelled at someone on his cell. When the orders were given to proceed to Mississippi, the driver turned off the engine. Agent in Charge Horton threatened the driver with obstruction of justice charges. The driver responded by holding out his hands and dramatically delivered a "book me, Dano," in a distinctly Memphis drawl. Agent in Charge Horton quickly changed his tone and was able to get the bus moving again with the magic persuasion of a green Ben Franklin. The team was not so giddy after this detour. They were headed for a place in Mississippi that wasn't on most maps and did not seem to be all that close. The destination in question was operated by the Mississippi National Guard, but was not an armory. It was unclear what the facility was, but Agent in Charge Horton was assured that it had running water. Judy briefly considered, but wisely ruled out breaking the silence with an offer to wager on rejection or acceptance at the off-map location. The facility was not easy to find and was never clear to anyone aboard what exactly it was supposed to be. A fenced-in building with a locked gate, ample parking, and one floodlight. The bus idled outside the locked gate as Agent in Charge Horton called more numbers. Eventually, a sentry in black battle gear, sporting a serious weapon, trudged across the gravel parking lot and shouted, "State your business," to no one in particular. And this was followed by a flood of squad cars from several jurisdictions, flashing their blue lights against the sleeping sky. No one aboard had heard of the obscure division of Homeland Security known as the Chemical Response and Investigation Unit, and calls east and west and north and south did not immediately bring verification of the unit's existence. Finally, a senior FBI official confirmed the CRIU was indeed a government agency, and he promptly routed the bus to a motor lodge to the southeast, 30 miles farther from Memphis. The motor lodge was run by an unfriendly Indian family whose patriarch argued vehemently with agent in charge Horton over last-minute price changes. At the motor lodge, the surly manager was the law of the land, and the FBI was forced to accept his terms. 17 team members would be crammed into 2 small rooms. At the patriarch's insistence, Judy Hunnsicker, the only female on the team, would be required to sleep in a room by herself. All parties were to remain in their respective rooms until dawn, and none of the patrons would be allowed in Judy's rooms for the duration of the stay. More rooms would be available tomorrow after 2 p.m., but their prices were subject to change. As it was well past midnight before she settled, Judy Hunnsicker slept deeply despite the thunderous snoring that rumbled through the brown-paneled walls on either side of her. As it was well past midnight before she settled, Judy Hunnsicker slept deeply despite the thunderous snoring that rumbled through the brown-paneled walls on either side of her. She dreamed that the Uncoordinated Video Team had been routed to Canada and that Agent in Charge Horton had been roughed up by a team of Mounties. She awoke early, unable to determine if her dream had been a summary or a portent. In the coming days, she would decide that it was a little of both.